Welcome, everyone, to the June 22nd City Council work session. Welcome to everyone here and at home. Before we go to what you see on the agenda tonight, happy to welcome Chief Gross to our council meeting. He's going to do a little update on the drought conditions and how it affects what we're doing around our fire safety issues, right?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We'll try and make this brief. We know you have a full agenda, but we just wanted to give you an update on 4 issues. One is the current fire danger level and our local predictions for the rest of the summer. We want to talk briefly about a fuel mitigation effort that was done under a grant in partnership with Public Works and the Bureau of Land Management. Talk a little bit about river levels and the activity that we're seeing, some of the drownings and some of the rescues that we've been performing, and then follow up with fireworks at the very end. So I'll go ahead and start off with our fire conditions. If you pull up the current websites for Willamette National Forest and talk with ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry, they'll tell you that as of today, the fire conditions are rated as low. That can change in a matter of days. We do see some high heat coming a little bit later this week and going into the 4th of July, which is something that we are mindful of. We are already in our wildland fire response mode, which means we send more resources for certain types of natural cover fires because they tend to move more quickly. Also, the Oregon Department of Forestry declared that they are in fire season as of the 16th. So it's just now starting to happen. Our prediction for this summer is we think we're going to see our fire season, which is when it gets more critical here locally. We think it's going to hit about 4 to 6 weeks earlier than normal. No predictions on the longevity at this point. That all depends on what we see in the way of precipitation. Obviously, we have a very low snowpack, and that's creating an issue with our rivers and our fuel moisture contents. With that, I'd like to just turn it over briefly to Deputy Chief Rosa Ludick, who's here to talk about the fuel mitigation efforts.
Welcome.
Thank you. Eugene Public Works has partnered with the Bureau of Land Management and with Fire to assist in some fuel reduction grants that include ladder fuels in the South Hills near the Ridgeline Trail. A ladder fuel is tall grass, brush, berries, or any fuel that can build to create heat that can get timber or a structure going. And our part of the grant is to do public education, mostly with neighborhood groups in the South Hills, but we also have done some outreaches at Albertsons, at the Ridgeline Trail celebration, and for the most part, you'll see some radio, some TV, some direct mailing, and we're really starting to make the connection with the community. On June 4th, BLM visited. They were very impressed with our efforts. They said we did a very robust job of doing a lot of the public education. They were impressed with our Public Works ability to really coordinate getting the probably most flammable and flashy fuels out of the system this year. They want to partner with us in future years, and we think that's going to be a relationship that's going to continue into the future because of the follow-up, mostly because our open spaces people. In conjunction with this grant, our talented fire marshal and deputy fire marshal, Amy Linder, she has worked with a nonprofit group to work with some signage that you may have seen on the news tonight. And this signage is through the Cody's Friends for Fire Safety. And in looking at it, it's asking people in the community, and this one here is for a military vet, lives here, please be courteous. And this is going to be managed through Facebook, and for a small fee, just to cover the cost of the printing. This one is for sensitive animals, and people that are interested in protecting, and posting these in their neighborhood can get on Facebook, and there's pickup points in the neighborhood, and you'll be able to get those. And we think this is a really good additions to the fuel reduction grants that are going on, especially coming into 4th of July.
We have found that some of our best efforts are neighbor to neighbor on fireworks and behavioral issues. So we're trying to capitalize on this. And actually, I think this is a really good idea. These signs can be reusable. I also want to let you know that within the week, you will be getting a joint communication from police and fire that's addressing what our action plan is for this year. It's going to look very similar to last year. The thing that's going to aid us this year is there's some very good data that police have collected on where the hot spots are. So we know where we've been making an impact and the areas we still need to work, and that allows us to take limited resources and direct them and focus them more appropriately to where the problem areas still exist. On the night of the 4th, there will be some extra police officers on duty that are going to help with enforcement, plus everything that is staffed and roles in the fire department will be out trying to have a heavier presence in the community. And that's something we've done in past years as well, but that's where we're going, as well as the public education efforts. And then we will evaluate next year and see where the improvements are and where we still need to work at the issue. But this is a multi-year issue to change behaviors that have been well-rooted for many, many years.
Thank you.
The last thing that I just wanted to talk about briefly was it's along with our drought conditions and our river levels. Our river levels have become quite dangerous. I'm sure you've seen some of the stories with drownings that we've had. Normally during the year, it's not uncommon to have trees, brush fall into the river, but we usually have spring flows, heavy flows that flush that out. This year, that has not happened, so we have a number of strainers, and a strainer is anything that allows water to pass through and around, but stops a solid object like a boater. And that's been part of our problem. We've had 2 recent drownings here over the last couple of weeks. And I'm happy to say we've also had 7 saves that we've been able to initiate with a water rescue team that really doesn't take very much for us to operate. Very talented people that are willing to step into harm's way to help our community. Some of these calls are not directly in the city. In fact, our city waters are fairly good shape right now, but it's just outside near some of our contract districts that we serve. But the people that have been involved in these are mostly city residents, so it's still our population that's out there. Lane County Sheriff's Office has a statutory authority for water rescues, but as the sheriff would, I'm sure, tell you, they are stretched very, very thin with a large county, and they may or may not be in the area when one of these calls happens. And if you just, when you're passing over the bridges out into the river on these nice days, it's like a flotilla going down stream, and some of the people are less prepared than others for what they're encountering. So that's what we had to just share tonight, just to kind of give you an update of where we are, what we're seeing in the environment. We have been very busy, and we think it's going to be a long, hot summer.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to really express my appreciation. As he knows, I've corresponded a few times about my concerns for how dry the season is, that we're considered a county that's under drought conditions, and so I've really been concerned as we near the holidays, and now we're going to go up to 100-degree weather this weekend, and so my concern has grown. So I really appreciate the manager and you, Joe, too, for coming and explaining what's going on. It seems like a very robust response, and I appreciate that, and I'm wishing for us a very safe season. A special wanted to shout out for saving those lives. I know how difficult that work is, and we're very, very appreciative.
We very much appreciate our people as well, and they're very well trained, well equipped, and thank you for that. We will keep you apprised as the summer progresses when we see changes.
Anybody? Eddie?
I was hoping you'd recommend a ban on fireworks this season. I've had a number of people ask me about that. It is very dry. I know you were trying last year, but it didn't do any good in my neighborhood. There were dangerous fireworks. And I've had several people ask me already this year, what are you going to do, because it's so dry? And I think isn't it possible to ban the fireworks when it's very dry?
The problem that we have with fireworks are the illegal fireworks, and they are already banned. It's still a matter of being able to get out there, catch the person in the act, and initiate enforcement efforts. So that's really where the problem is. As far as a ban, and we have presented that as an option in past presentations before this body. Again, though, if you're going to put another law on the books, you've got to be able to enforce it, or it's just another law on the books.
Okay. Mike?
Thank you.
Were you done, Betty? I'm sorry.
Well, not totally done. I think that's the reason I think there should be a ban. If you say it's only illegal ones, when you get there, they'll have a big party. They'll say, all we have here is legal fireworks. They can put the others away. And I think the only way to stop it is to say there are no fireworks. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate, gentlemen, thank you very much for the hard work and to your staffs. I appreciate the signs very much. I think those are a very good idea. I think that, appealing on a neighbor-to-neighbor basis brings out the best in our neighbors to behave well, especially if they know there's a sensitive animal or there's a vet in the neighborhood that, that's really going to bother. Just knowing that, I think, may be enough to at least ratchet this down a bit. So I think that's a great idea.
Claire?
Thank you. I wish I could be as assured by the good neighborliness of folks, but we had illegal fireworks in my neighborhood last night, and they were definitely traveling around, so it wasn't someone's party. They were going to different blocks and doing this. And I have an extremely sensitive dog that we had to drug after that.
We have a sign for you.
So I was going to ask, can you repeat how one gets
Here's your
sign?
Yes. I'll read it. It's on Facebook. Fire Dog Cody.
Fire Dog Cody.
Fire Dog Cody.
So we go there and
Facebook.
make a request for a sign?
And it'll tell you where the pickup points are.
Okay, great.
Do you want to share about the staking, too?
Yes,
Donated?
there is also staking that'll be donated, so it'll come ready to go on the ground. These
Wow.
are just two examples.
That's great. Thank you. And I just wanted to share, and the chief's here too, so he knows this. So I did call the non-emergency line, which I used to not do because I felt like I was burdening the police with something that wasn't super urgent. But the dispatcher said, yeah, that's been called in. So other folks had also called even before I had. So that's encouraging that people are now picking up the phone, the non-emergency line, and reporting these things, because that's going to help with the mapping and the other efforts that you and the EPD are undertaking. So thanks for your work and your efforts on this front.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Next item up is the annual meeting with the Police Commission. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. And I know we have the Chair and Vice Chair, Bob and Tamara, joining us. Also, Jeremy Cleversey, who is our liaison from the Police Department.
Well, thank you, Mayor Piercy and members of council. Mr. Reese, thank you very much for inviting us to come and give you our annual report. And I would like to start out by thanking our Vice Chair, Tamara. This was her last meeting. She rotates off. She's done 2 full terms. And I would like to personally thank her for the invaluable advice and help she's given me in transitioning to chair. With her experience as chairperson, she's really shown me a lot in the time I've been here. So at this time, what we're going to do is present what we have done, what the plan that we had, the biennial plan last time, and at that point, I'll take over and we'll talk about what we plan to do. And Tamara, if you'll go ahead.
You put the microphone over next to me.
Good evening. So I know I said last year was going to be my last time coming, but here I am. I have a few days left in my term. So I'm going to talk to you today about the work that we completed in FY14. If you remember, we're doing a biannual work plan now and reporting to you annually. So this is our annual report. The work that we did in FY14 is outlined in your packet. The highlights are reviewing policies related to civil disputes, videotaping of events, bias-free policing, which if you're not familiar with that policy, is our version of racial profiling policy, but we chose to go in a positive direction that's titled bias-free policing. The Commission began a review of policies relating to emerging technologies, such as body cameras, closed-circuit television recording, and recognition software. Part of that discussion and a policy that came out of that discussion was related to emerging technologies, and it would allow the police department to not have to start over with a new policy every time a new technology came out, such as drones or things like that. And some of those reviews continued into the FY15 year. The bias-free policing policy had been anticipated by the community and the Commission for a long time, and the Commission's discussion and community input were robust and lengthy, and that included discussion over a 7-month period, as it states in your packet. And so in FY14, the highlights here were we conducted and reviewed anonymous employee survey of EPD employees. That was a follow-up, if you remember, I think 3 years ago, the Police Commission, the chief had funded a community survey that was a telephone survey, and this was really part 2 of that survey process. That was a community survey conducted by telephone. This was an anonymous written survey of EPD employees and asked questions about the Police Commission and policies that had recently come through the Police Commission at that time. We also held a joint meeting with the CRB, and in that meeting we looked at one of their cases. We've taken turns hosting the meetings alternate years and talked about joint issues. This year it was their year to host. Or FY14, I should say. And then every year we've had an update on EPD budget both years. We received updates on EPD's Advisory Committee on Stops data collection. That's the group that the police chief put together to implement software and collect data on stops, and including race in those stops. And then we also did some work around homelessness and policing, including a community panel and a follow-up hearing at one of our Police Commission meetings around those issues. As you well know, that's a hot topic for everyone in our community. And then we did also hold a panel on bias-based policing. We had a community panel that we held on that as well. And then in FY15, we continued working on bias-free contacts and looked at a policy for doing a pilot project of CCTV cameras downtown. I think you've probably heard about that from the City Council liaisons as they've reported to this group. That pilot project has not yet started, but the policy for it has been written. We also, in FY15, entered into a joint resolution with the Human Rights Commission and collaborated with them on a joint resolution to revise intimidation of the second degree to include transgender people. So that was our work with the HRC in this period of time. And then as was available to other community members, EPD hosted use of force training that some of our members had the opportunity to attend. And then the last thing that we've been working on is public outreach on recording police. And that's also, there was a bill at the state legislature about citizens recording police. And so the Police Commission worked on a policy to cover that as well. I think that's about it for our past work. Do you have questions about that?
Any questions? Thank you very much for the report.
Mayor, we had a retreat in May. Oh, sorry. Okay. We're recording, right? We had a retreat in May to work on our annual work plan, as we do every year. And we had 10 commissioners present. Each one received 10 votes. This year we did it with poker chips, literally. So everybody got 10 poker chips. And after the issues were identified in the first part of the work session, they were able to vote. So out of 100 votes, we have two top 10 priorities. So we have the first 10 and the second 10. And top on our list this year was mental health crisis, and that's policy 418 in the police. And in light of community events, we certainly got an overwhelming vote for that. And the President's Committee on Policing. And we have the report out, and there are 6 pillars, I think, that they identified in the national plan. We are intending to go into that fully and discuss how it impacts Eugene and which one of these pillars, if not all of them, we can implement those things through policy. We also are going to be looking at concerns regarding police public outreach, outreach for target groups in a modified type police academy. And this is the administration's plan. I think they intend to reach out toward groups that may be feeling disenfranchised, gangs, underprivileged youth, people who are not used to dealing with the police in a positive way, and presenting a specialized academy to them so they may be aware more of what the police do and how they handle situations and answer their questions they have. I think that's an excellent idea. Other emerging issues, a discussion of social legitimacy, civil forfeiture, which is an issue that a lot of people fall on the side of making sure that that's implemented properly. Medical aid to suspects policy, civil disturbances and unrest, that's coming up on our next agenda. That's one of the items in the top 10. We will then be visiting issues on handcuffing and control, citizens filming crime scenes and so forth, the annual health and well-being assessment, ticketing for no driver's license or insurance, which is an issue about immigrants and persons who are having undocumented people in the area. We will be talking about recruiting outreach to focus diversity in police and police commission vacancies. Presentation on how sworn personnel are evaluated and promoted. Body-worn video, which is also coming up in our next meeting on the agenda in July. We'll be looking at fees for release of public record. Medical marijuana, new recreational policy 452 will be discussed, and communication review policy 370. For the most part, I think we are looking at issues that are concerned to the community. Somewhat clairvoyant, I guess, in the issue of police uniforms, taking a look at that in light of recent events too. So we are going to be looking at every aspect. We intend to involve the public and again in all our discussions and encourage them to come and speak to us about the issues that are of concern to them. And I thank you again for the opportunity to appear here today.
Thank you very much, both of you. I'd like to go first to our counselors who serve on the commission for any comments they want to make. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to say thank you to both of you for coming and for the presentations. Appreciate that very much. I know how hard you work. Claire and I, as counselors who receive stipends, get to participate in commissions, and we're paid to do so, but as community volunteers, your long, hard hours are really appreciated. Especially, I want to introduce, by the way, too, and mention that we have Bill Whalen here with us tonight as well from the commission, who is, as I understand it, the incoming vice chair for this next year. And as we say goodbye to Tamara, and that's the other piece that I wanted to make sure and say thank you very much for your service. For several years now, I've had the privilege to serve for, I think this is my 7th year on the police commission. And the leadership that this young lady has provided over time has helped guide us through a number of very difficult community issues, and she's done it with the utmost in style and grace and strength of organization, and helped the commission get through some very difficult discussions. And I just want to say thank you to you for your long, hard service. Yeah.
Claire?
Thank you. Yeah, I really echo that. I think, so at our Wednesday work session, we'll be voting on appointments to the Police Commission. And I think we've had the benefit of some really thoughtful and dedicated folks on the commission in these last couple of years. And Tamara's definitely been a stalwart. When I started working for the ACLU of Oregon back in 2005, Tamara was on the Police Commission. In fact, you might have been chair. So thank you very much for your service there, Tamara. I think I really agree with what Mike had to say. And then the other commissioner who's cycling off right now is EWEB Commissioner James Manning, who has also served very nicely on that commission and brought his background as a retired sheriff's deputy to the table and really contributed to the conversation. So, I just want to thank you and also point out I really think the Police Commission has been getting a lot of important work accomplished in the last few years and provided the chief with thoughtfully vetted policies. So even while sticking with the work plan, the commission's been responsive to community concerns. The policy on how officers are to deal and accommodate with being filmed by community members was taken up directly in response to community coming to us and asking us to look at that issue. My understanding is that the bias-free policing policy that we adopted is also being looked at as a potential model for what advocates are trying to accomplish at the state level. So sometimes it feels like we're just operating in a little conference room in the middle of the night and no one's paying any attention, but we are actually doing very good work at the Police Commission. So I want to thank both of you and Bill and all the other members who aren't here tonight. And thanks for this excellent report as well.
And we're looking forward to our new appointments.
Is there anything that you need of us?
Your support is enough. Really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Now we have a motion we need to put on the table.
I moved to approve the Police Commission's FY 2016 and FY 2017 work plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Being none. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In opposition, none. It passes. Thank you. Thank you again. All right. Now it's approved. You're
Get them.
Get to work.
Get 'em. Okay, great. So next up are committee reports and items of interest from mayor, council, and city manager. And I will start over here with Councilor Poling.
I'll pass.
Okay, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, 11 days ago, I was not in the jury room with jury duty, so I was able to go to the McKenzie Watershed Conference meeting up in Leeburg, and we started off with a report from McKenzie High School, and a lot of the seniors participated in this program. It's called SPARK, Stewardship Program and Aquatic Restoration and Conservation. They met every Friday during the school term from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. Then they went out engaging in real life science activities and actually going to Deer Creek, it's past McKenzie Bridge, and they learned about how to, what a natural riparian area should look like, what the plants are, how to identify the plants, which ones are native, which ones are invasive species. They learned how to identify a plant by using the botanical key. You take a leaf and you look through the key. They learned how to do that. They learned how to, they learned about water quality. They learned how to take temperature, measure the dissolved oxygen, measure the pH of the water. All these things are critical to the aquarium life in the streams. They learned about turbidity, and they learned how to identify the macroinvertebrates that live there. And I think some of them will probably continue this interest after they get out of high school. Also, along with them was a young man from China, Mr. Wan Wu, and Mr. Wan is taking classes at the U of O and education. He's from a village in the province, a village, not a town, not a big town. I went up and talked to him afterwards. He's a great guy. He is a brave soul. He is going to, after he graduates, go back to China and educate people about the ecological disaster that country is experiencing and try to help in some small way get people to do something about it. So that was pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you. Well, one of the things I was going to talk about was fireworks, but that's what I've been hearing from constituents' concerns. But cell towers, of course, and I want to know, I thought we were going to have another session on learning what we could do about cell tower applications in the future.
I'll just have to go back and find out where we left that conversation.
We left it, I think that we can't do anything retroactively, but that we were going to have information about what we can do about future applications. And that's another thing I've been asked about by constituents quite a lot. And then a big thing a lot of people in my ward are concerned about right now is the proposal to build a 7-story building by Cascade Manor. And people want to know, is that allowed? I thought that there was supposed to be some transition between single-story and higher buildings. Is that true, or?
I'll have to find out. I don't know the specifics on the project, so we'll find out.
I guess there's a sign somewhere, a small sign. There have also been complaints about how small the sign is. But people are very concerned about having a 7-story building across the street or next to them. And I'm not sure what we can do about that as a council. I'd like to know that too. What's the council's role in whether that can happen or not? And I sent out a request to have a motion about the island on Crest. And I don't know what's happened to that.
I saw that Glenn had sent that off to you, and I can resend that to you. There was a motion about 2 weeks ago, because he had CC'd me on
Yes.
it. Do you want me to? I'm happy to resend that to you, and you can take a look at it.
Yes, I want to. It has to do with, all of these things have to do with safety and livability. And I think especially since Crest School is probably going to be reopened, it's even more important to make that road up there safer than it is. The island is a safety hazard, really. And there will be a lot more traffic if the school reopens. And the IGR committee doesn't meet anymore, it seems, so I can't say anything about that. And unfortunately, I was out of town for the last ARAPA meeting. Greg and I were both at National League of Cities, but I think I'll send you some notes about that later. Maybe Greg would like to say something about University Communities Council, on which both of us serve.
Greg?
Thanks, Mayor. I was going to pick up on that a little bit. I attended the National League of Cities summer meeting with Councilor Taylor, and we're both on the University Communities Committee for NLC, and I had a chance to take a field trip with them up to Ogden, Utah, and the Weber State, and it was a really informative trip in seeing that what Weber State does in collaboration with the community of Ogden. They are literally in every community center in Ogden. They have a well-developed and evolved plan of community engagement, and they have several departments of the university that are working directly with citizens in the community, with the city staff, that's staffing those centers, and is really, doing some very out-of-the-box, provocative kinds of things that are deepening the community engagement between the city, the university, and its residents. There are programs for youth. There's programs for seniors. Really, really impressive stuff. I didn't pull the brochure that they have off of my desk at home, but I will, for a future meeting, and be able to share some of that with you. In addition to that, I'm also on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee for the National League of Cities, and attended that meeting, and both meetings, both committee meetings that we had, there was a presentation on an initiative around race for cities. I can't remember the exact acronym right now off the top of
REAL.
REAL. It's real. And We had a couple of presentations on that. They're just beginning to roll out REAL as a program, and so I think as we move forward with that, we're going to see some specific initiatives and some tools that cities can use, our city can use around having engagements and conversations about race that hopefully will move us forward, because I think we all need to have some work on that. The one that came up in the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, there was a lot of pushback to it, but I'd like to see what their conversation would be given the events that happened in Charleston the other night. So, it's something that we need to address, and I hope that we can be a lot more proactive maybe than some of our other counterparts are.
Claire?
Thank you. So I'll report on the Lane Act and the Human Services Commission. So the Lane Act has 3 vacancies that the steering committee for the Act will be looking at the applications we received. I think the deadline was a week ago Monday. We had vacancies for a rail representative, an at-large representative, and a land use environmental representative, and I do believe we got applications for all of those, so we'll have 3 new folks on the Lane Act. We discussed the work plan for the coming year and approved that work plan, and with the support of some public comment that happened at the beginning of the meeting, I suggested that the Commission think about endorsing the framework for Vision Zero, which is a new way of looking at setting goals around zero traffic fatalities in transportation planning and other efforts related to transportation. And I believe there might be even efforts at the state legislature to embed that conceptual framework into work at the state level, which I think would be fantastic. The Human Services Commission has taken on just a little extra thing in terms of meeting at the local agencies that the Human Services Commission funds. So we've had our meetings at Food for Lane County, at Pearl Buck Center, and the most recent one was at Catholic Community Services in Springfield, which was great. And I also suggested that we might even travel down to Cottage Grove, where we fund community sharing down there. And Mike Fleck, who's the director of that, thought that was a nice idea. Folks were willing to make the short drive. The Commission, we approved the budget. We're in the second year of the 2-year budgeting cycle that the Commission works under in terms of the services they fund with the nonprofit partners in the community. And at that meeting, we received an update from Commissioner Farr on the recent meeting that the city hosted to keep the momentum going on our 365 effort to house homeless veterans. And that meeting was very productive with many people in attendance who made commitments to taking specific actions to see if we could find more landlords to engage in that program and other specific efforts on outreach and communications around that. So the Human Services Commission is being kept up to date on those efforts as well.
Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. The Sustainability Commission's going to be doing a retreat in half day in July and a half day in August. And I know, Mike, your appointee just went off the commission, so and you weren't able to get into the cycle, but so you may want to make that appointment sooner than later because the July retreat's coming up. And it'd be very helpful to appointee to be attending both of those sessions. I had the opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. for a conference for work, and I went there the Sunday before, and I got to use the Washington, D.C. Bike Share program, which is just truly an amazing program and a project that they put together. It has like 3,000 bikes and 250 stations all over Washington, D.C. and Alexandria and all around. And I was able to, for $8, join for the day, plus a nominal charge for the bike rental, but just pick up a bike anywhere basically within a block of where I was and ride it around and then dock the bike back in and do some other things and then swipe my credit card and grab another bike. And I did that all day long in Washington, D.C. and it was just a spectacular thing. And many of you know that we have we're given a grant by ODOT for almost $1 million to do a bike share program here, design one here, and they're looking at that Washington, D.C. program. And our bike shares program is a little smaller. I think it's like 400 bikes and 24 stations, but it's hooking up with the U of O bike share station program, and so maybe that'll be a bigger thing to connect downtown U of O, maybe up into the brewery blocks, and so it'll be a nice system that we will to use as well. So hopefully that'll be coming up in the next year or two.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. I would remind those watching, this should apply, that at 7 p.m. tomorrow night is a meeting of the Good Pasture Island Neighborhood Association, or GIN, as we like to call it. It will be tomorrow night at 7 at the Marist High School Theater for anybody that lives east of the river and west of the Delta Highway. Let's see. I typically report on Police Commission, but that would be redundant. That will be it.
Chris?
LCOG doesn't meet till later this week, and Housing Policy Board not till the first part of July, so I don't really have anything to report.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to comment on something that Betty mentioned about the IGR not meeting. A couple of years ago, we changed the format on how we took care of the IGR business. I personally, after the 2 or 3 years we've been doing it the way we do it, I personally don't like it. I feel like the IGR members are being left out of a lot of the conversation, and without us being able to be involved in it, the rest of the council technically is not getting involved in it. I realize it takes a lot of staff time to, if we went back to the old way, now that Lisa Gardner's gone, I'm assuming Brian is taking over. With the changeover in our email system, I don't know if I've lost any new emails or not, but all of a sudden all the IGR emails are coming from Brian. So if he's the new coordinator, the staff coordinator for the IGR, then I think we should meet, discuss about how we're going to proceed, if we're going to go back to the old way or continue on with the way we're doing it, or maybe a combination of the two. But I feel the last couple of sessions, I think we're left out of a lot of the conversations. I don't think it's working very well. So that's just my point of view, and I think that's what we should do as the IGR committee.
As Chair, I
Manager,
agree.
could you clarify that for us about the position?
We haven't actually formally replaced the position yet. We'll go through that process. Lisa will be departing at the end of July, and so what we normally do when something like that occurs, we'll be looked at in programs and positions and take a look at what we want to do with that, to include the IGR. I think that's good feedback, and I think, as you suggested, what we've tried over the last couple of years is to do something a little bit different and see how that would work, and we'll make adjustments and adopt if we need to make some improvements. So now is the right time to be doing that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and we'll have those conversations.
And I'm okay with handling the grants the way we've been doing that, because that's basically the 3 IGR members can deal with that. But when the legislature is in session and we're getting all these bills, I just feel that there's a lot of them were dropped that we don't know about. So that was just
so I think it'll be a good time to revisit that. So
I was going to comment that on the committees that you guys are serving on, I don't know if you are hooked into the Town and Gown group that meets on a regular basis, but it would be good if you were, so you could keep up with all the stuff that's already going on in terms of how the city and the university work together on a whole range of things for the community. So I think you should be part of that. And I did, for my part, I just wanted to mention a few things that were in our council newsletter. I want to start out by saying I sent the manager a thank you about this, but you probably read about in one of our parks, one of the citizens who takes care of the park, who had bees in this particular park, was upset because of some spraying in the park. And so I put a meeting together with the constituent with a couple other people and with our parks folks, and they just did an incredibly good job of responding to the concerns. They did everything perfectly. You couldn't have asked better. They heard it. There was nothing defensive. It was let's make sure this happens the right way for everybody, because we all share the same concerns. So it was just excellent. And they will make some communication improvements and some other ways of really recognizing the work that people, when we ask them to volunteer and take care of our parks, that we have a good communication system with them, and we're having the right amount of notice when things are being done in the parks, and the right amount of explanations and all of those kinds of things. But it was truly just excellent. It made me proud of our staff. The other things that are in our newsletter I wanted to mention was kind of made me, what George was talking about, think about it, that the City of Eugene has partnered with our two school districts to provide water quality curricula in the classroom during this last year. 4,952 children in 28 schools received lessons about water stewardship, something that we will be caring more and more and more about. So I think that's just wonderful. And then the other thing was that city's waste prevention team partnered with Oregon Track Club, getting to that zero waste and all the events that we have, track events that we have. And then our recreation folks worked with the NCAA Track and Field Championships, and they gave 1,200 youth and their chaperones a day of fun activities on Olympic Day, June 13th. And the Olympians came and talked to them and shared their personal stories of dedication, academics, staying alive, and being the master of moments that call upon the individual to choose between right and wrong. So 3 really great things that are happening in our community with our staff. Thank you very much. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 things. One, I just want to say that I agree entirely with George, and I think we need to find maybe a third way than we did a few years ago, or we did this last 2, that involves the IGR quite a bit better than we have. And to a larger extent, there are perhaps some other things we can be involved in, that we should be involved in, that we're not currently addressing, as the mayor suggests, and I agree with that. As last time we met, I was still chair. I wonder if I can just call for a meeting of the IGR committee, and I would like to do that as soon as we have a staff person in place, so that we can, as a committee, refine our focus on things like this, and maybe our suggestions on what we'd like to see as a way forward. Secondly, I'd like to say that it's certainly not too late for any of you that would like to join. So far, Claire and I on the Council and Budget Committee dodgeball team for this summer in the city. I want you to know that I've designed a logo for our shirts that I think adequately reflects the Budget Committee and City Council that we'll use for the dodgeball tournament right there. I think that could work. What do you think?
It's on front and back?
Well, I don't know. That's whatever works, I guess, right there. So our body. Yeah. I know it looks like a bullseye, but hey,
yeah,
there it is.
There is a way out.
Please join us.
All right then. Yes.
Mayor, just one question to the city manager. I've been getting some emails, and I don't know if any of the rest of you have been getting these emails about cars to go and their parking patterns in the neighborhoods. But I recently got an email from a constituent about cars to go, not my constituent, another constituent in another ward, and pointing to Portland having similar problems in residential neighborhoods with cars to go, parking in front of people's driveway, or not driveways, but, houses where they parking their other vehicles, or other issues around that. And I don't know if we've had any conversation about specific regulations about where cars to go can or cannot park their vehicles as people engage them. I know that we're going to have continually these kinds of issues coming up as we have new modes of transportation being implemented within our community. So if there is some policy or something that doesn't exist, that needs to be developed. Hopefully you can enlighten us on that.
Yeah, we'll send something out with any information or updates on any and all of that.
In terms of cars to go, they are unfortunately going out of our community, so.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I do think
Well, then don't worry, something else will come back, you know.
Right, so I do think it brings
Trust
up
me.
for if there's somebody else that comes into the community, it could have the same issue. So I think it's still a relevant topic that we'll.
Yeah.
The issue with, I should just clarify, having said that, as I recall, the information we got is they have made a decision to get out of smaller markets and stay in large cities, and that's just a economic decision on their part. So that's
Not just Eugene, it's
yeah, across the country. Yeah.
But somebody else will fill the market, I'm quite sure.
And I would just a little bit of information. I have been following, in particular in the legislature, the rail discussion and the rain discussion. And I would say that at least the last I heard, which was last week, it was a bouncing ball kind of thing last week about whether we were losing half of the budget dollars that we had asked for rain or not. As it turns out, it appears like the money is still there. It's just not in the same places that we thought it was going to be. So that's in play. Everything seems to be okay, and the rail funding also seems to be okay. So that's. I can answer any questions on that.
It's over till it's over.
Yeah, I know. Up until the very, very, very end. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Consent calendar.
Huh?
Do you want to do the consent?
Yeah, we could do the consent calendar. Thank you for remembering to do that. So let's take care of the consent calendar in the last few minutes we have here.
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? None? All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and none in opposition. So we have passed the consent calendar. We'll be back at 7:30. Thank you.
Good.